I'm Randy Brouckman. I'm the co-founder and CEO of EdgeConneX. Simply put, we are about 80 data centers now, spread across 23 countries, Europe, North and South America, and Asia. Have historically started in the edge business, but really with web scale and hyperscalers as they were building out their cloud on-ramps and content in somewhere around 14, 15, really took that into as the cloud wars took off and became a principally provider to the hyperscalers for cloud, and of course are now very active with both cloud and AI.
I'm Andy Power. I'm the CEO of Digital Realty. Digital Realty, we support well north of 5,000 customers with their digital infrastructure for digital transformation, cloud computing, and AI needs. Our portfolio spans about 300 data centers, almost 3 gigawatts of operation, plus another 5 gigawatts of growth on top of that in about 50 metropolitan areas on 6 continents. I came across paths with the company over 20 years ago when the company was first coming public. I was literally the financial analyst on the IPO. I've often said building the Excel model and fetching the coffee when not many people knew what a data center was or where it was going. And I came on board about 10 years ago, been part of the team in evolving the company to the full product spectrum, from helping corporate enterprises, service providers with their connectivity needs, to the hyperscale cloud computing companies.
Hi there, I'm Steve Smith. I'm the CEO of Zayo, which is a 18-year-old private company now owned by two big private equity firms, EQT and Digital Bridge. Taken private about 5 years ago after being public for about 5 years. So we run a very large network all over North America and major parts of Europe. And it is a roll-up of 46 acquisitions over a 14-year period that is now 50 acquisitions. And so as you can imagine with that, there was a lot of gluing together and integration when it was taken private. But we service the same customers, the data centers, the hyperscalers, thousands of enterprises, and run a big network and are building the future pathways for AI all over North America today. And I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit.
Great, thank you. So I think we're going to kick off and get, Steve, we'll start with you just on perspective of, there has been a huge amount of growth within AI. These data sets are enormous, completely different than they were 10 years ago when we were all in the data. I was at Telex and we knocked boots together there. But I think it would be good to hear about kind of the perspective, because we hear a lot about the data center space, but also just the fiber perspective in terms of the connectivity is crucially important. There isn't a wireless alternative that can carry these data sets today. So maybe start with you, Steve. Just give us your perspective in terms of how are you capturing this? What's the focus for the company? And then, with the enormous growth, the power is less important for you, but Andy and Randy can talk about, where the influence of power today and what you're doing to kind of, cover these large data sets and obviously service them. So Steve, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I'll start with just a couple of thoughts. And Andy and Randy and I are good mates for many, many years. We've been in the business together for a long time. So as you all know, and you heard Bill talk about it this morning, and we missed the previous chat, but I'm sure Vince and Troy and the rest of them talked about this a little bit. But AI at the highest level requires two things: a massive amount of compute that we all know is going on, and all the LLMs being trained in all these remote places. There's a lot of connectivity going in to accommodate that. And then it also needs connectivity. Those two things are what underpinning. And I don't know, we've been doing this a long time, but I think we're playing at the intersection of some of the greatest changes and trends maybe in our lifetime. The uptake is much faster than cloud or internet or mobility was over the last 3-4 decades. We're a couple $100 billion into a multi-trillion-dollar investment cycle to accommodate AI unfolding in the world. You heard the whole China-US debate this morning from Bill. It's fascinating to watch all the companies in the world now that are piloting use cases and trying to figure out how to accommodate and use AI, because when it moves from these remote training locations over the coming years, and it's already started to go from training to what is referred to as inference. And in my simple language, what that means is when it comes to the metropolitan areas where companies are headquartered and people exist and massive data centers that these guys run every day that are in those big markets, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, everybody's going to start to use AI at a high rate. And then latency will matter, location will matter, all the use cases that all the industries are studying now will come alive. And I quite frankly, personally think this will change how we live our lives at a rate that we've never experienced in the past. And it's easy to say that as a technology CEO, but I think the consumer and business impact of this technology shift, from what I can tell, is going to be greater than anything we've ever experienced. And I heard a conference recently where somebody asked, I think it was Jensen at NVIDIA, goes, will AI replace my job? And his response was beautiful. He said, I don't really think AI will replace your job, but you may get replaced by somebody who knows how to use AI better than you do, which I think is a pretty relevant statement to what's going on. And so I think most of our companies, we're trying to inject it as fast as we can to learn and study use cases and try to figure out how we're going to accommodate and use it. But the amount of capital expense, power constraints, all the things that Bill talked about this morning are real. And we're probably in, guys, I don't know, first inning, maybe bottom of the second, but we are very early in a very exciting time.
I mean, maybe just to pick up a little bit on the power piece of the equation. So a few things. One, AI kind of sucks the air out of the room, but we're still having these demand trends of digital transformation, of cloud computing, cloud adoption, and AI is incremental to that. To me, what's so profound about AI, it is so dramatic and at the same time so early. I mean, I don't know. I was going to say, are the players even in the locker room, like getting ready to go on the field yet in terms of our inning analogy here? I think it's often, given how fast it's scaled, given how pervasive it's become, I think people are quick to jump to analogies of other infrastructure build-outs, whether it was fiber back in the day. But I think there's something different going on here that the folks around the table that are funding this and pursuing this, these are trillion-dollar company clubs, fortress balance sheets, non-AI cash-flowing business models, and they see the prize along the way. We've intercepted this AI piece of the equation, not because we've necessarily chased the customer out to a market for an electron. We've caught it in the intersection of those 50 metropolitan areas, like just down the road, Northern Virginia, which is the center of the universe for data centers here. And those big customers said, hey, I know I need a lot of this. I need it quickly. I need to push my power densities. And I'm not sure where this is going, so I need fungibility of the workload. Because I may use it for AI, I may use it for cloud, I may use it for both, and we've caught it there. And I think what comes next, this inference wave, again, that analogy is, I think that we're in T-ball on the way to the major leagues in terms of what that could be in terms of progression for corporate enterprise adoption or IoTs or broader, call it all the things AI can be infused into our lives.
I'll kind of, at the risk of repeating everything they've said, I agree. Let's not lose sight of cloud. It is still growing at tremendous pace. And I actually think you're going to see AI roll out in a cloud-like fashion in many cases. Inference will be deployed zonally. Cloud services will be part of AI services will be part of the cloud offering. It'll be more than just GPU as a service or TPU as a service. You'll start seeing enterprises that have migrated to cloud be able to build optimized and customized large language models for their business to be able to optimize it, doing that in the cloud, building private environments and being able to do things I don't even think many of us in the room have been able to imagine. I think it is presenting some new interesting challenges around the power infrastructure. Some of the weak underbelly in the United States is being exposed, to say the least. Bill pointed some of that out this morning, where China's probably got a little bit better infrastructure and certainly the ability to move mountains faster than, say, the United States. But this is the United States, and so no sooner do we talk about and laugh about FERC and our various power, and it's regulated and it's deregulated and it's hard to do and the government can only go so far, and that's all true, that you don't find industry come up with behind the meter, in front of the meter, coupled with renewables, new storage technologies, integrating it all in a solution, and yet that rolls out in 3, 6, 7, 8 months in no time. Now we'll have to get the industry, the manufacturing supply chains and so on to catch up. But I think it's the pace of change is dramatic. The rate of adoption of AI is dramatic. And I think something Andy said is really key, and just we need to pause, right? Everybody's a bubble, I've heard it all. Trust me, I've thought about it, I've worried about it as well. But Andy's right, these are multi-trillion-dollar companies with some of literally the best and brightest people, and frankly, really responsible leadership, right? These CFOs and CEOs and heads of these companies are making measured investments, big, but measured investments. And when they see things get a little out of whack, they pause on the investment side and they let the revenues catch up. And so I think while it is crazy, the rate of adoption and the amount of capacity, whether it's communications capacity and fiber infrastructure that Steve's talked about, or the data center capacity that we've talked about, I'm with you. Steve said second inning. I think we're in a batter's box, Steve. And I hate to take the sports analogies too far, because inference is just beginning. And there's big players that are just emerging, right? Early days for OpenAI, early days for Anthropic, and those models are making their way through.
Tony, guys, there's one other thing to bridge this morning's conversation I think super important, because Bill teed up is this like the 2000 explosion? Is it what's different 25 years later? And I think there's a couple of things that are huge different. Randy just pointed to one. The 5 hyperscalers that are underpinning all this capital are so much more sophisticated 25 years later. And all of us who are building with them, for them, around them, are doing it, we're not doing it speculatively. So none of us are spending capital without having an anchor client. That was not the case during the dot-com. And as you all know, it was a lot of startups, and and the world exploded. We're not dealing with just startups today. It's a way more sophisticated industry. The people building the infrastructure today are doing it with capital allocation discipline like the world has never seen. And so I mean, could it happen? Bill teed up the what if, but I just think we're so much smarter today with capital allocation, and we're dealing with 5 of the biggest, most sophisticated companies in the world. Could they all be wrong? I personally don't think so, but it's a debate for all of us to continue to have.
I think I want to pick up on something that. Let's see if I can hear me. I think I want to pick up on something that's really important that you've all mentioned, which is AI is out there. It's great. We're talking about it. It reminds me of when we talked about edge data centers 10 or 12 years ago. It's a different phenomenon, obviously, but I think you've all talked about enterprise as well as cloud, which is obviously driving a lot of interconnection. It's driving a lot of growth, and I think it's being overshadowed by just this nomenclature of AI. So it'd be good to, and maybe Randy, you want to kick off again, because I think we just left off with you talking about cloud, but it's also cloud. The enterprise adoption of IT outsource is continuing. It's going to continue more. Content continues to drive a huge amount of, and maybe kind of talk through that, because I think we've talked a lot, but that's also driving power and gigawatts as well.
Yeah, it is. Chasing Gigawatts, I guess that's the name of the panel here. It is. Look, I think there's always that tipping point. And you remember how many years it took the tipping point to happen with the cloud? Enterprises were 5%, 6%, 7%, 10%. But then we hit that tipping point, and the adoption of the cloud really took off. But we're not done, right? There are still whole sectors and whole industry sectors that are earlier days migration. There are many governments around the world, many educational institutions that are still in that migration. I think when I look at I think the enterprises that have migrated to the cloud are best positioned to quickly adopt, test, further, deploy AI-based solutions as well. I think you're going to benefit from having your data there. You're going to benefit from the optimization and modeling you can do of that data. You're going to benefit from the trust you've put, and these things are trustworthy. I mean, I cannot tell you how much the people these customers were talking about spend on security, more than any enterprise could possibly spend on security and making sure this data is protected. And so I think we're going to see, I think that's why we're seeing a faster adoption. Are there some obvious sectors that are going to pick up AI first? Absolutely, right? For defense and security services, there's no doubt. This is a no-brainer for pharmaceutical, for healthcare types of industries. Education system's already been disrupted and is disrupting quicker, right? I've spent the opportunity over Labor Day weekend to spend some time with some men and women in college who already all their data science classes have turned into employing and modeling and running various things with AI, to the point of, like, one guy had to write a program to go take every 10K that had been published this quarter, find everywhere a new product innovation was, lay out what those new products were across 4 different sectors. You had just about 18 junior investment bankers were just unemployed with that rollout. And obviously, look, the early adopter always, and the one that can afford to be on the latest and greatest and tip of the spear, is the financial services sector, and they will continue to be. So I see rapid adoption happening. I think it's there. Like, we haven't talked about the global side of things yet, but like, China is something special. The more data center capacity than anywhere else in the world. The ability to add more data center capacity to anywhere in the world. I think the United States massively underpredicted how fast they could move, both on the chip technology. There isn't one model, contrary to what Bill said. There's 3 or 4 large language models already in China. Europe has got a regulatory power, permitting, and just kind of general resistance challenge in front of it. And rest of Asia, we've got to get stabilized trade relations in place, and we'll sort it out. United States is clearly the heaviest investment from at least the US-based technology stacks, and China has their own, and it'll be an interesting battle around the rest of the world.
Just to add on for a second on the front end of the enterprise, I view the enterprise still super early, proof of concept, but going to accelerate. I agree with Randy that just like the benefit that's benefited digital infrastructure, one technology builds upon another technology and so on. So those who have moved towards embracing digital transformation, going to the cloud, going hybrid cloud, will be the fastest to deploy AI most efficiently. I think there's things that are different this time around than prior iterations, though. One, the infrastructure is now leaps and bounds, like the sizing, the power densities, the cooling. You can't do this in your on-premise data center that's in an office building, right? You don't have the bandwidth that you need to make this all tie together. 2, we are in this mainstream media on the front center of the CEOs, CTOs, CFOs of enterprise. Like, what are we doing with AI? What are we doing with our data center? What are we doing with our connectivity? We're no longer way down the stream for the enterprise CIO who's thinking about the software stack and all the other things, and picks the fiber and the data center last. So I think those evolutions are going to make this change a lot different than we've seen in prior iterations.
I'd also add, guys, that I find the China-U.S. debate awfully interesting. I think we all, particularly in this room with all the policymakers and people that are around that, working with the commercial companies, need to pay close attention. But I read an article this week, I don't know how directionally correct it was, but somebody stated there was like 12,000 data centers in the world, and roughly half are in the United States already. So, I think Randy's absolutely right. The power generation that you saw Bill talk about this morning, the nuclear investments in China, is something to pay attention to. But there's so many factors other than power. Power is a big factor today, and these guys fight it every day. But Silicon Valley is kind of a big advantage for the United States and all the other innovation that goes on in this country. I don't know how many people in our country are craving to go to university in China every year. I think the opposite effect is going on in this country. Everybody comes from all over the world to get educated here. So there's lots of advantages that we have that we need to pay attention to and stay on top of. The nuclear investments are large. They take a long time, as you heard Bill talk about this morning, but it's the cleanest energy out there, and we're going to have to figure our way through that. But I don't know, I'm more of an optimist, and it baffles me that the market, the world won't figure out how to go fix this transmission, this power challenge that we have over time. But boy, we need to pay attention to it for sure, because I mean, China and U.S. is going to be, we're going to make AI touch everything. Both countries are. And then you got UAE and Saudi that's stepping up these huge, massive investments because of all the LP investors in that part of the region that invest in all our companies. So it's an interesting dynamic now to watch all this, and you got a partner to do a lot of this. Alliances are a big advantage, and boy, the United States needs to pay attention to that, where we have the relationships to advance this, because we're going to be staring at China for a while in this race, and we need to be smart about it.
Yeah, Steve, I think we just pick up on that partnership and alliances. This is an important time to take a moment, reflect and understand that. Right? The world's a big place. Every country is going to have various ways of adopting it. Some are going to be able to create their own. Some are going to hopefully be partners America ships this technology and technology stacks to. But I do agree with you, Steve. When I look at the Middle East, what Europe can't do, the Middle East can do in spades right now. And I think it's important that we partner there. We don't just make tech available and create unknown situations, that we partner. And that we support the Middle East and we support Europe and obviously as much of Asia and India in particular as we can. So I do think it's a time for global alliances, for business partnerships and business alliances. And I think that's probably the most important thing we should be thinking about and should be doing. Not sure now's the time to thwart the export of our expertise and our technology. I actually think it's the time
I think our
to
relationships
accelerate the relationships and the export of the domain knowledge.
I think our relationships are a force multiplier if we do it right.
Just to pick up on energy and usage, I think I'll bring it back to a little bit about energy. A lot of talk about nuclear, a lot of talk about renewables. How much time are you spending? I mean, obviously from the hyperscalers, a lot of demand for grid power. There's a lot of, there's a move to the natural gas. But just as you start to explore alternatives, have you been spending a lot of time? Have you built up a team? I mean, if you look back a couple of years ago, you had one energy person, maybe. Now you have 10 or 12 or whatever it is, and you're thinking through that. And I think, Steve, just on the connectivity side, as you think about building from additional fiber, you want to be closer to these unique locations, because I think one of the big things that we look at from a data center perspective is how do you find reasonable space and reasonable cost power, right? And so really, as we transform this business, nothing's really changed. The enormity has really just changed in terms of, but go ahead.
I'll start with the energy piece and let Steve take the other, and Andy can jump in. I'm blessed to be private. Sorry, Andy. I am blessed to be private. I have an amazing majority shareholder in EQT. For those of you that don't know, EQT, well, the second largest private equity, second or third, depending on how you count, infrastructure investor. And they saw this coming, and they've been doing power for a long time. So let me start with, we actually created an internal business unit called PowerConneX a few years ago, because this didn't sneak up on us, by the way. The power problems in Europe have been existent for some time, and we actually had to build our first on-site generation capabilities there. I think the beauty of both our investor and, more importantly, our customers is they haven't given up on sustainability. Base load is a problem. Let's not kid ourselves. Base load's a problem. Gas is going to solve a lot of base load problems. Many parts of Europe and the United States lost their way with nuclear decades ago. Maybe we can get some of it back. I think in our PowerConneX division and having EQT, and this reason I pointed to it is we've been able to go buy components of the ecosystem, front of the meter, renewable generation, behind the meter, renewable generation, huge storage-based solutions of various types, front of the meter gas, behind the meter gas. And we've been able to stitch that together all behind the scenes for our customers. You need capacity, I'll provide you a turnkey solution. So yeah, we've had to deal with it. I think industry will move faster than governments, and I know it'll move faster than regulated monopolies in the power industry. I'm an optimist like Steve. I do think that the AI action plan and the AI priorities may be the wake-up call, the siren call that gets the government to start to change some things. I hope so. The great answer would be clean power generation and get it on the grid. And frankly, Just like we need to improve our roads and bridges, we need to improve our transmission in particular, to some degree distribution. I think we can afford to help with the distribution piece, infrastructure, but I think we get there. So yes, it isn't one person. We created a whole business unit, and then in each market we have power specialists now. So it's a big part of, when you look at my SG&A, big part.
I mean, similar to Randy, I think first and foremost, you got to speak to partnership. We're in this together with our utility partners, and that was a relationship that we just took as status quo going back 10, 15 years. Now it's called hand in glove partnering. When all this demand accelerated and built upon what we had in cloud and digital transformation, the power just got exhausted. It wasn't just because the data centers. We as a nation have been called sunsetting power sources, not investing in transmission, and doing a lot of things that required more power. So at that outset, we went to all our utility partners saying, let's go to our infrastructure. Where's substation power that's idle? Where can I help you, help me, or vice versa? So that was a big piece of that. So we as a team at Digital and myself personally spending a lot of time with all of our utility partners across those 50 metropolitan areas. Two, and this goes back to Steve's glass half full, I think the old quote, necessity breeds invention and innovation. And I'm glasses, we're going to figure this out, the power needs and the transmission needs. If you take, of all the criticisms that are being yielded at the administration currently, the one thing that you could see that's come out of them recently is this embracement of AI, technology leadership. Let's make that a priority for our company. Let's export the American technology stack, right? We're blessed by the trillion-dollar companies being largely headquartered in the United States, but they're not US companies, they're global organizations, right, that fully embrace that. They do it in a very mature manner. Sustainability is right there with their business and priorities. We at Digital are close to 90, we're hopefully by the end of this year, 90% green on our 3 gigawatts operating through true net additionality, not just RECs. So power is a big piece of the solution. The one thing I would add here is, and I think EdgeConneX and Digital fall in this category. I'm not sure every single data center company or somebody who threw up a website yesterday and became a data center company has fully got their head around this. We need to be thoughtful long-term in this, in how we embrace these bridging power solutions and do it in a framework that gives back to the community, gives back to the utility, whether it's demand response, that we're not in this for a trade for just AI. We didn't wake up and say AI is a great thing, let's go invest today and get out tomorrow. Long-term business, patient capital. We're public, so we're public like permanent capital. Randy's in a very long-term private capital. We partner with some of the biggest private equity funds and just raised our first hyperscale data center fund. But we're in this for the long haul. We're not in this for 1 year, 5 years. We're talking 20 plus years of growth and investment, and we got to navigate this in the appropriate fashion, which I think both of our companies have done a nice job of.
The only thing I'd add to that is I actually introduced, I think, to both these gentlemen on stage over time. We've been approached by the natural gas companies who are watching this whole thing unfold and say they see all the constraints, and they might operate in 13 states in the Midwest or 12 states in the West or 8 states and so I've met 4, 5, 6 of these CEOs that run these natural gas companies. They see the power constraints and they're like, go introduce me to all the CEOs in the data center space, because I want to try to think about helping. Now it's more complex than just dropping laterals from their natural gas pipeline. But the whole industry is watching this, trying to figure out how to solve it. Now that's not the cleanest energy, but I think with the push of AI, it may delay the renewable path we're going on a little bit while we're standing up all this compute and networking. But there's all kinds of people thinking about how to solve this in parallel with what Andy and Randy are talking about. And one other quick thing, I don't know what made me think of it now. Bill mentioned this morning, and I love Bill. He gets some of the greatest data points. I don't know where he gets them from, but he mentioned this morning, I think it was somewhere in China where they're building a big campus that could be more megawatts than Digital Realty has. And I kind of chuckled to myself, having run EdgeConneX for 12 years, 7, 8 years ago. No one's ever going to go catch the 20 plus years of investment all over the world that these two guys run. And one campus is not going to accommodate the world's compute and networking needs. So, Yeah, you might have more megawatts in one centralized. I think the biggest data center is in Mongolia, but it's not going to accommodate the needs of the world. So I kind of chuckled about that. But it's something we're going to have to pay attention to. But these guys have global companies that are servicing customers all over the world in multiple continents. That's hard to replicate. There was a ton of capital to go accommodate that over 2.5, 3 decades. So, anyways, back to you, Tony.
No. Yeah, we don't know where those tidbits come from, but I think we talked about partnerships, which is great, and sustainability has been brought up. One of the things I want, from a regulatory perspective, and/or sort of a two-part question here, and/or what do geopolitics play in the role of these partnerships? I mean, there's challenges in the world today. We obviously want to cooperate with all the specific regions, but are you running into a lot of regulatory challenges, and are there government interference that just high level on kind of how you navigate those channels?
Yeah. Watch what you say. But mean what you say. Andy, how do you want to do
Thank you for that. Listen, I think by and large, the world's leaders are heart or mind is in the right place of wanting to make this a priority, wanting to not let this be a U.S. and China only phenomenon, building off of what was prudent when it related to data sovereignty and privacy. But different parts of the world, different countries have different hands. Some are blessed with great energy sources like France in terms of nuclear. Some are less blessed and have more called congestion. We're running, this is not just the president of each country can't just, maybe ex-China, can't just wave a magic wand and digital infrastructure proliferates in all the right places at the right time, right? We're running into new phenomenons where the outskirts of metropolitan areas, permitting offices are seeing something they've never seen before, right?
Yeah, we don't have a code for that.
Yeah.
We keep getting that.
So
yeah, I think you're right.
Go ahead.
No, I want to pick up on one of the things you said earlier and tie it in with what you just said. Andy mentioned that these companies, at least the big U.S. ones, are very global in nature, and they operate globally, and they operate responsibly in every single country, almost on the face of the earth that they operate. And they're very supportive of things like sovereign AI and sovereign clouds, and they're building solutions that allow them to do that. It doesn't all go back to the U.S. The data does not do that today. It just doesn't work that way. And so I think you're seeing it. Look, are there some uncertainties right now? For sure. I think saner minds are prevailing and stopping technology from being exported and stopping the technology stacks from being exported. I think that was probably short-sighted. I think people thought we had a huge lead, and that was you protect it by keeping it in, and I think trying to prove that was not going to work. And so let's make it available. Let's make it safe. Let's make it sovereign if it needs to be, and shared where it should be. And so I think that, we can't talk enough about how these companies are organized, how they operate. Yeah, they may be headquartered here, but they actually operate as global citizens. And I think they're good citizens of the world.
I have a point out on the regulatory question. So, I mean, we have a bunch of folks in the audience here who are in and around policy. And like I said earlier, have to work hand in glove with what we do commercially. And I think we all fight the regulatory challenges. And the one thing that matters if you want to compete and stay ahead of our competition in this AI conversation is speed. And so, for example, we are building 15 new long-haul routes all over North America. It's the next generation of the connectivity routes between major cities, all funded by the hyperscalers. And we run into all kinds of regulatory issues that delay us. And so if you could wave the magic wand and get through a lot of these issues, we could build faster. We could stay ahead of our competition faster. And so there's definitely room for improvement in that, and that's a big complex. It's an easy statement for me to make, but these routes take anywhere from 12 to 36 to 48 months to build. You're going through mountains, you're underground, but these are the next highways that are going to accommodate all that data traversing the world that's underpinned by AI. And if we could go faster to go do that, and these guys could build faster in markets where there's regulatory issues, we'd maintain our competitive edge. So that's a big topic for us all to continue to talk about.
I want to switch gears a little bit. I think we've talked a lot about how you're supporting AI, but I think it would be helpful to say how you're using AI in your internal daily activities, creating optimization, efficiencies. Steve, why don't we kick off with you and kind of talk about what some of the examples.
Andy and Randy, we talked about this a little bit before we came out today. I'd be shocked that any companies we deal with aren't piloting or looking at key use cases across every industry in the world. I think they're all studying that. I think we're moving from exploring to actually trying to figure out how to use these things. For example, in our company, we're not that, we're 3,200 employees. We're in the middle of an acquisition where we're taking on another 1,700. And we're in network, so I have our chief network officer running as fast as he can to figure out which tools and techniques to bring in to become more productive with how we deliver the network. And the same thing in IT. Personally, I don't think there'll be a CIO in the world that won't have to adopt every tool and technique they possibly can, because humans will not possibly be able to manage the thousands of events per second that IT systems generate. So I think we're all going to get consumed in our IT organizations. But I think depending what your business model is, exploring right now how to use AI tools and techniques is a very, very good piece of advice. And we're doing it in multiple things, just how to become more cost effective, how to go faster. We can deploy people fixing the network quicker with AI tools that can give us predictability faster. We can lower our churn with customers with predictive models. So there's a lot of areas that companies, partners, and software companies and systems integration partners are developing tools at a rapid rate that can help us all become more productive, more efficient, more cost effective.
I mean, so we've been piloting and moving to pilot to expansion and broader rollouts in numerous shapes and forms. If you think about the physical four walls, the telemetry, the temperatures, the use of water, we have numerous types of applications that are starting to monitor that, and we're going to keep getting better and better and better over time and broader adoption across our portfolio. If you look at the more people side of the equation, whether it is our RFP responses, our called tracking of pipeline, our digital nexus, which is like an internal AI chatbot essentially for called all the resources we're using. But still, if we go into the future and look back to this time, I think we're going to be looked like caveman, in terms of how we're using AI relative to where this could go in terms of adoption. The one other thing I'd say, and somewhat similar analogous, digital was built on the backs of lots of acquisitions and integrations. I mean, I can't even count them all in terms of customer portals and ERP systems. And well before AI was everywhere 2 years ago or 3 years ago, we went on the start of this digital transformation of our company, of aligning our business processes, getting on our system roadmap, using multi-hybrid cloud. And we had to do that because we had so much friction internally, externally to make, but to me, going back to the start of this conversation, that foundation which we're delivering this year, next year, and the year after, is going to be what AI is going to be built upon, right? If we didn't have started that years ago, because I've not found the AI tool that cleans up all your ERP systems and make them work seamlessly yet. You got to do there's a little manual labor here. But I think it's going to pay dividends in terms of what we can deliver and how we can activate AI in the future.
I think AI is an amazing tool, but it has to function with people, right? Yeah. And it can't just be independent.
One thing, Andy, you just made me think about, and we used your CTO for one of the meetings. So I get my leadership team together once a month physically. They're all over the country. And we do 90 minutes of an outside-in conversation. So I've been doing it for 2 years now, and Randy, I'm going to get his smartest people to come talk to us next. But we get people from Microsoft, Google, AWS, Meta, Oracle, Digital Realty, EdgeConneX, you name the EdgeConneX. We have them come in and just talk to us about how they're exploring with AI. What are they seeing out in the industry? What are their customers telling them? So I think now's a great time for you that are in organizations where you're trying to accelerate your learning. Bring outside-in perspective, because almost any company you're dealing with today that's bringing a partnership to you are working with this. And so that 90-minute conversation we have once a month is really fresh, and it's really high potency of just information, and the learning curve, I can see it going up with my leadership team, just listening to what everybody else is doing. And it's an easy thing to do. And most of these companies love to come talk to your leadership team about what they're working on.
Just one, we have a few minutes left. Just thought I'd say, if you think about sort of 2 or 3 areas today, where are you spending your time? What challenges and kind of what worries you from a go forward? I mean, we've had this huge expansion. The last 18 months, I think we've grown more than the preceding 20 years, and we will continue that evolution from both from a fiber perspective, from a data center perspective, software, et cetera. But where do you sort of see, hey, what worries you, what challenges, and where are the opportunities from a go forward in the next sort of 2 to 3 years? Maybe we'll start with you, Randy.
Yeah, look, I think from a growth opportunity and innovation window that sits open here, from impact on society, this is somewhat generational, right? I had the opportunity to live through the PC revolution, the internet revolution, the mobile phone revolution, and here we go again, right? A whole new economy will likely be built on this. And that's a wonderful opportunity. However, capital's not unlimited. Power's not unlimited. People and expertise is not unlimited. In spite of AI, maybe we need a little less of it, but we still have to augment it. And so I think what we're trying to do is balance some of those things, right? How do you grow responsibly? What areas in our case, of the world do you need to be making investments? It's clear you're investing in the United States today, but what about, and that will happen tomorrow, but there are other places you need to be making at least the beginnings of bets. I'm not saying go build the capacity and they will come. I think to Steve's point, we're much more responsible 25 years later than what was happening 27 years ago, right? So I think we're spending time on that strategy, understanding it. I think we recognize capital is not unlimited. Now we have a lot of access to it, but you gotta put the right capital in the right place at the right time, and right, don't go chase. You don't want to be the next pets.ai, right? Like that's the wrong thing to go chase, and it's the wrong thing to invest in. And there's a little bit of that out there. So we're spending time on that, trying to figure out where the public-private intersection and solutions sit for power, right? I think, and frankly, just in general, where the public-private acceleration of AI needs to be, right? I've typically lived with the mantra of less government is more government, but I think in this case, there's probably need for a lot of industry, a lot of enterprise is going to drive it, at least with the U.S. based us. But there is some need for some public-private partnerships, and we're trying to figure out how to do that in a sustainable. Andy said it. We're in this for more decades, not 3.5 more years. So we got to think about how to do this in a thoughtful, systematic, programmatic, strategic way. So those are some of the areas we're, at the leadership and at the board level, we're spending time with.
I think the 3 things that come to my mind, and not in order of importance, are strategy, capital, and people. On the strategy piece, I think it's hard to say this is not up and to the right, but that doesn't mean it's not like this on the way up and to the right. And I think strategy is going to really dictate. Not all digital infrastructure or data centers or companies are going to be created equal, and I don't think everyone's going to fail upward given the demand. So, and that goes back for us in terms of the markets we focus on, the customer segments, and how we're navigating our growth. On the capital side, I think people will screw this up before we run out of money to spend. But I think, especially in our format of a perpetual life vehicle, we're thinking about what happens next, because there's a lot of private capital we invested, but they're not looking to permanently put money into this category, nor do they have the time or the wallet to do that. So our going down the road of raising our first fund and having these LPs do their work and diligence on us was the keystone to scale private capital around hyperscale for us. So it's not necessarily what's the money to build the next data center, but how we scale the capital for the long-term ownership of these assets. And then lastly, people, whether it is the engineers I'm trying to staff in Frankfurt or Singapore or Northern Virginia, all the way up to the leadership ranks of digital, our industry has been blessed with tremendous growth, and we got to keep on growing our people and bringing more talent from different walks of life into the industry to scale with it. I think we've come a long way, but if you look at like the category we're in and where we can go and the duration of that growth, we need to bring more talent into the industry all around.
Yeah, the only thing I agree totally, guys. I think you just nailed it. The only thing I would add to that conversation is I do think the public-private point that Randy made is super important. Public policy is going to have to help us enable the accommodations, right? So we have the governance models, the ethical standards that we in the Western world live by. So we're going to be competing with other parts of the world that are chasing what we're doing. And then privately, I think the private equity money that's been flowing into this industry is an accelerator. Randy and I are both in private companies, both been around public, and the private equity money today can accelerate the heck out of this in this country. So I think we need to really manage that properly. And then, you know, all the conversations you're going to hear about today are about kind of around scale. You know, this thing's scaling really quickly. So I think the next 5 years, I think all of us are really looking at how do we build scale and reach to build a foundation for this thing called AI. And then I would say, you know, in parallel, there'll be some efficiency that'll start to take hold when we go to inference and all the enterprises. We all start using AI to run our lives. And I think the efficiency game becomes really important years 5 through whatever, 15, 20, because, you know, this is a new technology. And once it's embedded and going in the foundations there, which is what our companies are doing, then it's about how do you use it? How do you make your life more efficient? So I think it's a scale and efficiency discussion that we all got to pay attention to the next 5 to 20 years.
I want to thank Randy, Andy, and Steve. Appreciate it. Thank you for being so attentive.